Hey, Chris.
Hey, Cyndi.
I am super psyched that we're together again.
Yes, it's good to be here. For those just tuning in, I've been on a hiatus for about a month now, and Cyndi has been delightedly showing up each Monday to serve you and support you. My mission for the last few weeks has been to focus entirely on the Miracle Store and helping shape it in a new way and help it live up to the vision that I wanted for it. And so because of that, all of my attention and energy has been focused there. And I've been felt so supported and blessed to have Cyndi here supporting you in my absence. And I wasn't planning on being here today. She texted me about an hour ago and said, "Do you want to come on and play?" And I said, "Let's do it." So we are here. And Cyndi, thank you so much for being here, for supporting us. And now I'm going to hand it over to you for the opening prayer that you've been so delightfully and joyfully taking us through each week.
Yeah, I know we call it prayer. For me, it's just remembering why we're here. So if everybody wants to take a moment, and in the words of my friend Bill Free, if you want to place your hands on your heart, close your eyes if you're not driving. Because even though this world that we're seeing is a dream, it still helps to keep our eyes open while we're driving. Otherwise, it changes the dream. But we really want to, or I do, and I join with Chris in stepping back, placing our ego, our thoughts, our expectations on the shelf, and asking our holiness, that part of us that knows where we are right now and knows the truth, to step forward. We have only one goal: to take our place in the awakening from the stream. We have only one guide, and we hand this eternal moment over, that only that would be fulfilled in this moment. More often than not, I lose my words and the energy gets so beautiful and so intense that I almost forget where I am and what I'm doing.
Well, thank you for that, Cyndi. I already feel more centered and grounded. I've been going a mile a minute for the last, 3 weeks. So it's good to be here and good to be grounded and centered. And that was definitely pleasant. Thank you for that. So I can't tell if you froze or not. I hear you, but your image looks a little frozen. Can you hear me? I'm going to take that as a no. So Cyndi's been having some technical challenges, and oh, there you are.
Didn't happen while we weren't together, but we are having a storm, and I did have the serviceman out here to look at my internet, and they did find a problem, and they did tell me it was fixed, but obviously something is still going on.
Yep. So where are we going today? What are we going to kind of play with?
Well, I know that you have been, it's so interesting because the teaching in the 40-day, we're ending a group 40-day right now. And there's a lot of people that have been showing up, and they've been saying things like, this has been phenomenal. It really is life-changing, and they have all these beautiful moments, and they can't wait to see what happens next. But at the same time, they have this space that says, it's been wonderful, and I have all this peace, and then I wake up today and XYZ said something, or I sent the wrong email, or got a flat tire, or, why hasn't the world changed around me? There's still this havoc. There's still this craziness. I want everything to be so much better, and it's not. And I was laughing because I could tell my own stories about what happens in the world around me. But one of the reasons, when I was sitting thinking about today, I was thinking about you, um, and I was thinking about what our job is, this idea that, our goal is not to put lipstick on a corpse, because literally the course teaches us that everything we're seeing is already dead. Um, our only goal is to awaken, and everything that we see is happening because we requested it, not to punish us or not to, give us the bigger house or the beautiful car, but everything is coming to give us this opportunity to do our only job, to be the light, to awaken. And the more we can allow, the Holy Spirit to flow through us into whatever's going on, the more we're in the flow and the more peaceful we are, no matter what's going on. And you have been spending the better part of, however much time living in that,
Yeah.
this concept of let all things be exactly what it is. And even more than that, to, watch ourselves so carefully so that for any sign of being triggered, so that we can shine more light on it. So it would have been, I thought it would be just an awesome opportunity, especially since my internet may or may not go out again and you could keep on talking, to talk a little bit about how this concept of what to do when, the world around you goes nuts, and how
Yeah.
to, how to use that to help in the awakening.
Yeah. Well, kind of what you're pointing to that most people don't know is I live in Northern California, and we've had a combination of being ravaged by some really bad fires, but also to help prevent the fires, PG&E, our only electric company, has been systematically shutting off the power for days at a time. Could be 2 or 3 days, and then they gave us power for a day, and then off for 2 or 3, and on for a day. I know people who've been out for 7 days to 9 days at a time with a brief break in between. And this is, already disruptive to life and how we live, even just the internet connection or the power. Because we live below the sewer line, we have a pump that pushes all the sewage up to the sewage system. So we can't even use the toilets or anything when the power is out, because otherwise it all backs up and it can be thousands of dollars to fix. On top of that, and it looks like Cyndi just disappeared, so this will be fine. A few weeks ago, like I said, I decided to join a special program to teach me how to actually make the Miracle Store live up to what the dream inside, the hope, the wish, but more importantly, what feels like God is calling for me to help it become. I've always said God's will and my will are one and the same. And I want the Miracle Store to become something fantastic and of great service to the world, to a much larger part of the world than what we share, in ourselves. And at the same time, I felt that was part of what God was wanting. And so a few weeks ago, I joined a program to help me manifest that vision, to create that. And so that coming at the same time as the power outages created a lot of triggers, a lot of challenges, because I'd be working hard, I'd be studying, I'd be learning, I'd be living and growing into the Miracle Store and everything it can become. And then the power would go out. And suddenly I'd wrap everything up and go to Starbucks or go to Panera Bread restaurant, anywhere I could get an internet connection. And sometimes the internet connection would be terrible and I wouldn't be able to get any work done. Other times it would be fine, or I might be able not to get might not be able to get a seat at Starbucks, because if you didn't get there by 6:30, everyone else whose power went out was rushing there. I mean, it's been a wild adventure, to say the least. And so part of why Cyndi kind of texted me and said, "Hey, Chris, you got to kind of come on today," is because of the way that I've been handling that, which is, it would be very easy to get angry and triggered because I'm intensely working on a huge, important project, and yet it seems like the whole universe is conspiring against me to make that not happen, to get in the way. And what has been true for me is that my job is just to keep showing up. It's not that I need to be a certain way down the program, or the miracle store has to be in a certain configuration. It's that my job is to keep showing up, trusting God's will and my will are one and the same, and to see how that unfolds. And one of the interesting things that was kind of delightful for me is, prior to all this, I had ordered a bunch of stuff from the miracle store. I pretty much am my biggest customer because I want to be the miracle I want to see in the world. And that's one of the ways it shows up for me. And one of the things I had gotten recently was a forgive sticker. And I put the sticker on my laptop. And so anytime when, I'm out here at the Starbucks or whatever happens to be, and I'm doing work, and everybody's coming here because all the power is out all around, they're seeing this on my laptop. And I'll show it to you. I'm probably going to mess things up here pretty badly. But here you can see, yeah, that's totally not. There we go.
Forgive.
Forgive. This is the sticker that I've been having on my laptop while I've been working at Starbucks everywhere. And it's interesting because, it's not, it can have such a different meaning to so many people. For some people, they might just be angry. They have a relationship hurt, something that it lands to them at the ego level of like, Joe, just, okay, maybe I can forgive that person for what they said or what happened. Or in the larger context of what I was talking about, the power being shut out for, like 1 million people in California, where I'm living, there's, my power was out. There was a small area of my small town that had power. Everything around it shut down. So everyone was going there, students, employees, anyone who could get an internet connection. And so for them, maybe it's to forgive the power company or to forgive life for, throwing them into such inconvenience, or, forgive God if they have a personified view of God as, benevolent, or, however that shows up for them. And yet at the level of the course, it's a reminder to me, even though I'm not seeing it, I'm remembering it's there. And it's this reminder that forgiveness isn't about anything. It's not about what's happening. It's not about the people. It's not about the situations. It's not about the experience. For me, the reason why that's on my laptop is every day it's a reminder to return to the present moment, because that's what forgiveness really is. It is realizing there was nothing to forgive. I've always said there's this quote of mine that I've kind of said, which is, you've kind of, and this is paraphrasing, you've reached true forgiveness when there isn't anything to forgive. It's the state of being here right now, such that, you can forgive things before they happen, because it's not about them happening. It's just about being here right now. And so this whole experience with the power going out and me being thrown out of my house, just to be able to use the toilet, and to be able to work. My son was out of school for days at a time. People around in the neighborhood and other places, they have been in really bad situations because of all this. And yet, circling back, for me, it's just been a reminder, like, here right now, this right here, this moment is what's real. And if it's asking me to go somewhere else, fine. If it's asking me to stay, that's fine. If it's asking me to prop my laptop up so someone can see that forgive sticker, fine. Whatever it is, my job is just to keep showing up. It's nothing more than that. And when something, like Ram Dass says, what is in the way is the way, that is, A Course in Miracles. When we have these challenges, the Course is very clear that everything that shows up, whether it's a relationship or a trigger or anything, a dream, it is just there for us, as Cyndi was saying, to awaken, to see this moment for what it really is. So that's kind of been my experience these last few weeks through the chaos and the turmoil and what's been going on in my local area, and how it's kind of affected my living style, and yet been an opportunity to keep just kind of living the Course moment by moment, day by day.
So I'm curious. I have a couple of questions based on my own experience and based on people that I've worked with and different things. Number one, and I know you know how to turn it around, but through all of it, did you ever get triggered? Did you ever notice, like, man, why is this happening again? Thoughts, victim thoughts, or aggressive thoughts. And I ask really because they still show up in my space,
Right.
because, I'm still in a body and they still are showing up. It's just how long do I hold on to them and do I believe them? And so have you noticed any of the thoughts coming up? Have you noticed any emotion around the thoughts? Has any part of it been stickier than others? Did you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
are you in
Yeah.
that space of just being, in the flow and teaching peace?
Right. Yeah. Let me land with that for a minute because, it's sort of there was a lot going on, very much like a roller coaster. And to answer your question, I actually kind of have to pull myself out of this present moment. But even in doing that, I want to offer something, which is that even when we go to a past story, one of the most valuable, important things we can do to live the course is to be as present in this body in this moment as possible. So even when I say I'm going to go back, I'm still fully in touch with my hands, my feet, my sensations, my listening, what it means to be in this moment. And I'm also accessing memory, allowing it to be something that informs my experience of the present moment. So I am going to land for a moment and just see what does show up for me as I kind of replay those past moments. Yeah, the first thing that came up for me was I have a simple routine every morning, which is I wake up, I use the restroom, I take a cold shower, I exercise, and I eat breakfast. And I would, at first I still kind of maintain that routine, but then there was a point where I didn't have access to my breakfast because I had, my hemp milk from my drink and everything. And I felt like shaken off my routine a little bit. But then I went to restaurant where they had Wi-Fi and got myself some breakfast. And I thought, okay, well, this is an opportunity to eat out and treat myself a little bit. So, for me, there was that movement. Now the Wi-Fi at that place was terrible. So I was eating breakfast and getting no work done. So there was a little bit of annoyance, I think. It wasn't like big, but it was just kind of like a little bit of friction. Like I could be working right now while I'm eating and their Wi-Fi is terrible. I was like, okay. And then once I was done eating, I went over to Starbucks and their Wi-Fi was fine and everything was good. So that was part of my experience. There was a trust and an openness that where I'm supposed to be is where I am. And so that felt really kind of supportive in my nervous system, even though there was all this chaos. I was kind of grounded. After some days, I recall being annoyed at just being forced out of my house repeatedly, kind of like, kicked out of my own home, right? That's the feeling of it. Home is supposed to be, at least for me, a grounding place, a settling place, a relax, my nervous system. When I leave and I come home, it's like, oh, okay. If I want to relax, I do. If I don't, I don't. But at least there's a safety. And throughout this experience, I could see after some number of days, like this idea of like, again, like, and then, okay, again, this is what it is. So yeah, there was that friction. There were those moments. Not at first. Like I said, it was kind of just as I was getting, my ego was getting graded on and worn over time. That repetitive pushing against what I think reality should be or how I want to live. But even when they came up, it was usually very short-lived. It was like, okay, yeah, I am frustrated. This does suck. I'm annoyed. And this is what's real. So let's trust with what is real. I was getting to bed at an earlier time. So there was certainly some benefits to my health and things like that. And I already prioritize sleep, and I think that's important. Even for, especially on the spiritual journey, we think back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're talking about the basics of like food and shelter at the top, and spirituality is where we can get to when we have all these other things taken care of, in his hierarchy of needs. And it really genuinely is hard to tap into our connection with God and our connection with ourselves when we're not taking care of our body, when we're not taking care of getting enough sleep, of eating nutritious, or nourishing food, of drinking enough water. And so one thing I would offer is, no matter what's happening in your life, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how much you're triggered, do whatever you can to nourish your body, to get the sleep you need, to drink the water you need, to eat the food that supports you. Because anytime we're not taking care of the body, it's one more thing pulling at us, one more thing pulling us away. If we're ravenous and hungry, it's really hard to be present. Now, we can be present with that, right? We can be present with our experience of hunger, and there's no reason not to be, because that is what's real and in the moment. But if it's not necessary, no reason to put ourselves through it, and I think that's something that's easy to lose sight of in the spiritual journey, is the belief that we somehow have to go through the mud, slog through the mud to do the work, that life, has to be hard so we can learn the lessons to get through the course, to live the course, to be a spiritual person. That's all the ego telling us what it means to be a spiritual person. When really what the course asks us to do to be a spiritual person, if we're going to let that, label land for a minute, to be a teacher, a student, whatever you want to call it, the course is just saying, just be here now. If you're hungry, acknowledge it. And if you can, go get some food. It's not saying to deny ourselves or deprive ourselves. So I always encourage, whenever possible, to get the sleep you need, to get the nourishment you need, because it makes life easier in this body. And whether the body is an illusion or not, and whether you're in a space to believe that or live that or not, is not relevant. The point is, in this moment, the body feels real. And as long as it feels real, it is an opportunity for us to both be present as well as see what nourishment we can have out in the world. So that was something I was thinking about.
It's interesting because I was listening to you, and if you didn't show up, I was, and we'll talk maybe once I know what's going on with my internet. I'll do it in the next couple of days. An experience, coming with lesson 153 in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And it's so interesting because I read the text and I did all the lessons, but I'm a different human being now. And when I go back as directed by my higher power, it's as if I'm doing everything for the first time. It's so interesting. So this time around, as I was studying in preparation, because I've actually just in a 40-day call with Lisa this morning, she was talking about your big ass goal, set up your bag for next year. And I immediately said, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to live life without defenses. And that requires really paying attention, because your defenses aren't really what you're doing in the world. They're the thoughts you're allowing to help you color, right? And so within this lesson, because I was listening to you, Jesus very, very, very specifically asks you to stop every hour. And when you stop, and with the statement that you're going to continue that for X number of lessons until you get into the habit where you recognize that everything flowing through you comes from your holiness. But right at lesson 153, which I didn't know until I started preparing to be here now, was that he asks to stop every hour, take a moment to say thank you for what happened in the previous hour, and to ask, literally just say, what would you have me do in the upcoming hour? Yeah. How cool is that? So, I know that God, the holiness, wants me to be really happy. I know that whenever I surrender my ego wants for the holiness wants, my world gets really fun. Like, and big things happen, you know, cars and whatever, but just more love, more laughter, more joy. I'm never hungry. I always seem to be well dressed
Yeah.
and
Nice hoodie.
well fed. When I let holiness guide, I tend to somehow bring food into my life that makes the body just sing and come
Yeah.
alive. And so I'm listening to you, and actually I want to suggest that it's even easier than that,
Yeah. Oh
than
yeah,
what you're claiming.
absolutely.
Because if you do this as it's just written there in lesson 153, if you stop, for a few minutes every hour and say thank you for what just happened and said, okay, give me the next to-do list,
Yeah.
then you're going to find from your holiness that it's time to take a shower. It's
Right.
time to take a walk. Maybe it's time to do, some weightlifting, or, all of a sudden you're going to desire, a salad with a big chunk of salmon on it, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
or make a phone call. But why do we think that our holiness doesn't want us to feel great?
Yeah. Yeah. Gary Renard said it great. He said, the more that we kind of, live the course, the more we realize how much how much more we enjoy life, because we're not holding on to the guilt and the shame and all the baggage that brings us down. I mean, you know, just imagine for a moment living a full day with no guilt, no shame, zero negativity. Like, how would that feel? Like, that would feel great. And Gary says it's not against the rules to have a great time. Like, this course is clear, God's only rule for us is perfect happiness. And now in that context, it's being present. It's not the ego's context of happiness that it's speaking to. And yet it's still, when we really live the course, like what you're talking about, it's inevitable that we enjoy things more. Food tastes better. The moment feels better. Even in our bodies, even when we have pains and aches and things like that, they aren't, in my experience, as severe, but I'm also able to find other parts of my body that feel better, that feel calmer or more relaxed, that I can bring my attention to. But yeah, you're right in that when we actually do what the course asks us to, we actually enjoy life more fully, because we just don't have all that baggage of, just tugging at us, pulling us down, pushing us around, all that stuff.
Yeah, and here's the other thing the parts of your story that I heard, because, because holiness wanted you to be solo there for a while.
Clearly.
Is that I am learning more and more as I fully immerse in this course, that it isn't like my goals are all changing. So I'm listening to you, and you were, you're triggered a little bit because you have this habit that feels so good. You get up, you have your breakfast, you do your exercise, you say your prayers, and holiness showed you that even though it's not a big deal and you were able to shift very
Yeah.
quickly, here is something in your world, in the world that was created to show you what needs to shift to be awakened, that you are depending on to be happy.
Yeah.
And the Course teaches us that as long as there's something that we see in the world that we think we need to be at peace, then we're an ego. Then
Yeah.
we're a little bit off track.
Yeah. Well, even today, I haven't been here present with you for a few weeks now. I've been working fiercely on the Miracle Store morning to night. I mean, really, like, that has been my full attention. And in that, even then, I'm asking, what is the next thing that is being asked to be done with this? And is, even, getting up to eat, taking my naps, things that energize me or support me, or being with my son, or whatever is showing up, those are still part of the experience. It's just that the spirit has been clear. Keep moving forward with this, Chris. Keep moving forward with it. And so when you texted me this morning at, an hour beforehand, and you're like, hey, you want to come on, the ego was like, no, I don't have time. But the ego isn't my master. Course in Miracles is clear. You can't serve two masters at once. You can't serve ego and Holy Spirit. And so in that moment, before I responded, it's like about to respond, I'm like, no, I don't have to. And I paused and I landed. I was like, yes, and that's what the moment was calling for me, because the project that I'm on, the work I have, it is never ending. It will go on, because that's part of the gift and the mission and what is being called forth. And at the same time, what was being called forth in this moment was to be here with you. And I had to trust that guidance more than anything my ego thought I should be doing with my time. And it was kind of funny, because then I looked around and thought, well, I got to kind of straighten up my office, because this place has been, a chaotic, hurricane, and there's going to be people looking at this space. And then I was like, I don't have to clean it up. I mean, I really don't. My ego wanted to clean it up. And at the same time, then when I landed in the moment, I'm like, what should I do between now and the hour when I'm going to be with Cyndi? And then it was clear, like, okay, yeah, clean up, but it was interesting watching the ego pull at me in all of this, and then also allowing spirit to flow and be clear. Like, the ego doesn't have to be wrong. Sometimes the ego will tell us something, and it is exactly the truth that is appropriate for the present moment. But the challenge we have is we take the ego as real. And so we listen to it instead of just acknowledging it. Going, oh, that's what it said. We sit there and say, it says clean, so you need to clean, Chris, right? That's not what I'm talking about here. It said you need to clean. And I said, let's find out if that's true. Let's thank you for sharing. Let's find out if that's true. Spirit, what you got to say about that? Okay, let's clean, right? And I think that's something that if we can remember that in our daily lives and in the course, that the ego always has an opinion. It's always going to be throwing shade at us. Sometimes what it says may have a shade of truth to it. That's okay. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to listen to it. But at least if we can acknowledge it, it lessens that energy and frees us up to then listen to Holy Spirit much more clearly. And maybe the Holy Spirit will say, do that same thing that ego said. That's fine. At least this time we're taking our instructions from the correct master.
So it's pretty cool. I studied with Jim Self and Mastering Alchemy for years. It's not Course in Miracles, but as I was listening to you, I remember his teaching on the ego, because he said the ego is not our master. The ego has a fabulous, fabulous role in our lives in human form, because it's the ego that remembers that 2 + 2 = 4. It's the ego that learned and has stored the skills that enables you to vacuum the rug and make the bed and turn the computer on, and all of the technical skills, involved in running the business is stored somewhere within the ego's databases. And the ego's brilliant when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Really, really lousy at setting priorities.
That's the truth. Yes.
Really, really lousy at turning the emotional, guidance system on. Like, it is completely distorted.
Yeah.
So while being a human, we are quieting the instructions that come from the ego relative to what to do and when and why we should do it. but we need the ego, you know, without that functionality of the ego, we couldn't drive a car. We wouldn't know how to make the, you know, those things, you know, it becomes fun. And I don't know what's true or what's not true, but I do know that, when we quiet that space and we start really watching, you know, our automatic responses to the world around us, we can more and more easily determine when the ego is active and when the Holy Spirit is flowing. And we can also, and what's really neat, because I always say that the course is black and white, but there is this picture that's coming up in my head that allows for a little bit of gray. And tell me if this makes sense.
Yeah, I'll land
So,
with it.
yeah, so the spirit is actually always there, right? So the spirit is flowing, and the ego is screaming or hollering or whispering. And what happens is when we're fully immersed in the world of the ego, we don't even know spirit is there. But then, you know, spirit gets loud enough to hint that there's another way, and that, you know, it's okay to know that God is real and that there's this peace and there's this connection, and it's a whisper. And the more we kind of listen and relax and into that, it's almost like there's a flow of love that moves through this like black dark wafer density stuff, and it's sort of taking the ego. This is at least the way it's showing up as I'm speaking, and it's creating this wafer, this block that we call the ego, and it's kind of making it Swiss cheese. So there's this more and more of the light can flow through what the black and white, you know, this is the way the world looks, and, you know, you have to have X number of dollars in the bank, and you need to have a job, go bag groceries so that you can pay, you know, and someday you can have fun. Whereas
Yeah.
spirit is just saying, shh, just be still. Let all that fear stuff go. If you're listening to fear, you're not listening to me. And as soon as you let the fear go, I will make sure you're fed. I'll make sure your body is taken care of. I will be the best master you've ever had. Just stop thinking. Just stop thinking and think with me. And then the Swiss cheese kind of opens and opens and opens and opens. And all of a sudden, you know, your little block of ego looks more like what a kid does when he folds a piece of cheese and eats the center out of it. There's this big hole.
Right.
And then you get to this space where I think you and I are spending more and more time, where there's hints of the remnants of ego floating around, but almost like those little black floaters that are in the eyes sometimes. And when they show up, you can look and say, oh, Holy Spirit, there's another one of those moments. They're trying to pull me back into fear, but I like it better here with you.
Yeah. You know, as you're sharing that, you know, a thought came up, which is it can feel really overwhelming to commit to a spiritual path, whether it's A Course in Miracles or any other path that's true and brings us into the present moment. Because it's easy to see what the kind of end result when we see like a teacher or an ideal that the ego wants us to live up to. And it can feel overwhelming to be like, well, I'm not that. They did this for 10, 20, 50 years to get there. And every time that sense of overwhelm has come up, one of the things that's really supported me was remembering what Eckhart Tolle said in The Power of Now. You know, he talked about this idea that it's not that you have to have it all figured out or be there or anything like that. He goes, all you need to do is have just a moment of being truly here right now, just to know it, just to taste it, to experience it. And then over time, you might have another moment. And then over time, you might have another moment. And what you notice, the more that we commit to this path of spiritual development, of being in the present moment, of awakening, we realize that we have more of those moments over time, and they happen more frequently. Instead of being every 2 days or 5 days or 10 days, maybe with the support of the workbook lessons, it becomes every 8 or 10 hours. Yeah, the course says do it every hour, right? But in reality, we often forget. We don't set the timer. We're driving, we're doing something. So it's every 6 or 12 hours. But then maybe it's every 5 or 10 hours, every 3 or 6 hours. And eventually maybe we get to every hour. And it's only a second, not even a second, it's a split second. We're in the moment. And we go, could I extend that? What would this moment be like if I were fully present for a second and a half? Or 2 seconds? Or 3 seconds? And that's what this journey really is. It's going from that millionth of a second every 5 years of feeling present to more moments more frequently that last longer. And that's kind of what came to me with the Swiss cheese. Is it's that same thing, those holes in the ego, they start off as a block of cheese. That is the ego. It is blocking our view completely of the world. And then slowly we start to peek through a little bit. And those holes get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and there become more of them. And like you said, until finally it looks like someone just took a big chunk out of the cheese and it's just this giant hole. And we can start to see the world more clearly through the lens of presence, through the lens of Holy Spirit. So I wanted to kind of offer that progression that Eckhart Tolle offers us, which is we don't have to be there. All we have to do is keep returning to the present moment. And every time we do that, it's like building a muscle. It becomes easier over time to keep repeating the process of landing right here, right now.
I love it. It reminds me of just an awareness I've had in the last little bit, because I used to tell people you just have to make the decision, and you keep making it and you keep making it. And if you do the workbook lessons every day and you read the text and you keep showing up. And I saw this morning that there was still a judgment there. There was still this space that some people could do it better than others.
Yeah.
And it's not true. Because the truth is, we are already awake. We're playing a game, or hanging out in a movie, and it's just like you said, and you just, if somebody's listening, like it got really still right now and I've got chills, like all the hair on my body right now is in some way or form standing on edge, which is always my sign that the holiness is speaking through me. And I've noticed that my words are getting slower. So anyone who's listening in this moment, who stopped in this moment, if they were casually listening, but I've noticed that there's been a shift. And so they've come into this space with us now. Then in this moment now, as you're listening to Cyndi's voice, and you're noticing that there's this space between the words, and you may even notice that your breath has slowed to match mine, then in this moment, you're awake. And this moment is the only moment there is. So you've awakened. Congratulations.
Indeed. Yeah, and that actually feels like a good mellowing out for kind of wrapping up for today, that we are always awakening, and it's always an opportunity to return back to this moment. And, the whole lesson of, 153, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. All that's saying is return to the present moment. That's all it is to be defenseless, because it means that we're not throwing the ego up to in front of all the things that get in our way of being present. That's what the ego does. It gets in the way of us being present, of seeing the things that allow us to be present. And so, when we are truly defenseless, it just means we've just let the ego we're not listening to it anymore. We're here right now. So I just want to say thank you so much, Cyndi, for our time together and for texting me and inviting me to return and play with you for a little bit.
Can I do a quick plug?
I was.
Can I do? Okay.
I was going to plug the 40-day journey, because I know that's been so instrumental in your experience and what's really helped you come to the place you are now. And so anybody who wants to return to the present moment more fully and more easily, definitely click the link on this post for the 40-day journey. It's free. And it honestly, if you really commit to it, if you really show up, it is going to change your life. That is guaranteed. So check it out. Enjoy.
Okay. And these things, these sweatshirts, the Miracle Store, I have to go and get some more, because I've been living in them. And so I now know that they go through wash really well, and they are soft. And I like looking at myself in the mirror, and people stop me, depending on what I'm wearing. And it's a moment just like your sticker, where you get to share the truth. I'm in love with the sweatshirts, especially, and the t-shirt, hoodie. And I keep washing my coffee mug. Do you see?
Oh yes, I know those. Yes, I love those. I've got my Just Let Go coffee mug, and I am terrible in the sense, like in ego playful sense, but my wardrobe is all from the Miracle Store. Like I recently, that box right there is sweatshirts that have yet to be opened and washed, because I've been so busy working on the Miracle Store. I haven't even opened that. But it's all there, because I feel the same way. Like they're comfortable, they're soft. I wear them all the time. The word that works for me is I feel like I'm coming home. I feel like I'm kind of at home, and it's comforting to the body and pleasurable. And, my ego loves looking at positive stuff too. So, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, I'm so glad that you are loving your sweatshirts and your Miracle Store gear. And even more delighted that people are loving it on you and seeing that, because to me, that is when I talked earlier today about getting in touch with the Miracle Store and helping it sort of manifest more fully the vision that God has intended for me and for it. It's that being out in the world. It's that we have an opportunity to impact people, and they don't even know it, that they might just pause for a moment, maybe smile, maybe take a deep breath, maybe connect and be curious, like, that's a cool sweatshirt. And then suddenly it leads into a whole new conversation, maybe about A Course in Miracles, maybe about food, who knows, whatever the Spirit wants that moment to be about.
Yep. But I do know that my Christmas list is going to include the Miracle Store. And I'm psyched about that. I love you, Chris. I love this space. I'm so psyched that, that we get to share like this, and we get to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cyndi. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you again soon.